Welcome to Nevada History 217. Another installment of Mr. Beals' story time. Today we're going to read from It Happened in Las Vegas by Paul W. Papa. The story today, The Sale of Las Vegas, again, 1905. Anticipation filled the hot May air as more than 3,000 bidders and spectators stepped down the metal stairs of trains, eager to make their fortunes. Some people were dressed in fine silk hats with expensive suits and cravats. Others wore weather-battered shoes and dusty jackets covered in mud. They traveled from as far away as California and Salt Lake. The host of the event, William Clark, offered round-trip transportation from Los Angeles and Salt Lake at $16 and $20 respectively. He also promised to refund the travel money for anyone who purchased what he was selling. Las Vegas. Bidders made their way to the pine stage that had been quickly assembled for the event. The stage is covered on the top and back by white canvas, and stairs have been built onto one side. Men gathered on the stage. Paperwork spread out onto the table in front of them. Dust filled the dry air, and the temperature had already reached its 88-degree average. The cotton-clad bidders had no choice but to crowd as close to the stage as possible, struggling to take advantage of its limited shade. The auctioneer on stage slammed the gavel hard on the table, creating a puff of dust. He rambled in a fast sing-song of half-words, emphasizing, or at key moments, the prices by the spectators. People held up cards and yelled out prices, making bids of up to $1,750 for plots of land. The auction progressed quickly, building excitement as prized plots became scarce. When the last swing of the gavel crashed onto the pine stage, Clark had sold 176 of the 1,200 lots, making a daily total of $79,566. And there's still another day to go. But this wasn't Clark's biggest problem. Unbeknownst to most of the bidders that day, the town side of Las Vegas had already been sold a year earlier. Since 1881, rumors have been spreading that the railroad is planning to connect Salt Lake City to the fast-growing Los Angeles. The rail was slated to follow the old Spanish Trail, now called the Mormon Trail, which ran through the valley known as Las Vegas. The owners of the Union Pacific Railroad, seeing great opportunity for advancement and profit, installed the rails along the trail. Unfortunately, the railroad was not operated well in the 1880s and fared no better when the financial panic of 1893 hit the U.S. By the time the Spanish-American War erupted in 1898, the Union Pacific was on the verge of bankruptcy. It eventually reorganized, but not before a competitor bid had won rights to the area. That competitor was William Andrews Clark. Born in Pennsylvania in 1839, Clark was motivated by nothing more than greed and a desire to make a lasting impression on the world. Clark moved with his Scotch-Irish parents to Iowa when he was 17. There he studied law and taught school. He served on the Confederate side of the Civil War until 1862, when he started drilling a mine in Tell Hill, Colorado. William Clark had a younger brother named J. Ross Clark, who was a banker and successful miner. J. Ross moved to Los Angeles for health reasons and opened a sugar beet factory, which was a new industry to the Los Angeles area. It was J. Ross who first approached his brother with the idea of forming a railroad and running it from Salt Lake to California. The railroad would not only be able to move quartz and copper from Montana, it could move sugar beets, newly discovered gold and silver in Nevada, and anything else that needed to be transported to and from the Southwest. The brothers formed the San Pedro, Los Angeles, and Salt Lake Railroad. Clark knew that the railway would need a place to stop and water the steam boilers of the engines, so he searched for a place where water was plentiful. The Las Vegas Valley was the perfect choice. Not only did it have an abundant supply of water, it was halfway between Salt Lake City and Los Angeles. While investigating the area, Clark discovered that a rancher was willing to sell for the purposes of establishing a railroad. So he set up a meeting. Helen J. Stewart owned a large ranch in the area that was once the Mormon fort. Her husband had seized the property in an 1882 foreclosure before he was shot and killed in a gunfight in 1884. He had managed to turn the site into a large ranch that stretched almost 2,000 acres. Clark met with Stewart and told her of his intention to bring his railroad to the valley. Stewart was pleased, and in 1892 sold Clark the right to 1,840 acres of his ranch, the ranch, for $55,000. The deal did not include 4 acres of a family burial plot or a separate lot of 160 acres that Stewart would keep for the family. What the deal did include was the all-important water rights. Clark purchased the land with the initial intent of creating a water station, repair shop, and houses for workers on the railroad. However, following his most ambitious desires, he quickly realized that the spot was a perfect location for a town. All Clark needed was to survey the lots and sell them. Enter John T. McWilliams, a Canadian immigrant born in 1863 who had moved to the United States in 1879 to pursue a career in engineering. McWilliams had apprenticed as a surveyor in Canada and took up the career when he needed to find a job. McWilliams had a very successful career, being appointed as a delegate to the National Irrigation Congress in Los Angeles, designing Flagstaff, Arizona's first water system, and surveying the Bright Angel Trail into the Grand Canyon. In 1902, Clark hired McWilliams to survey the 1,840 acres Clark had purchased from Stewart 4 years earlier. As McWilliams surveyed the land, he was struck by the same thought that had entered the head of Clark. The spot was the perfect location for a town site. Being a surveyor, McWilliams certainly had the ability to lay out streets, blocks, and sidewalks. With this idea in his head, McWilliams approached Stewart and was able to talk her, Helen J. Stewart, and was able to talk her into selling him half of her remaining 160 acres in the west portion of the ranch. What Stewart was not able to sell him was the water rights that had already been purchased by Clark. It was a factor that would prove to be an issue down the road. In 1904, McWilliams advertised his new town site, which he called the McWilliams Town Site, with the promise to make money quickly. Quote, "Get in line, buy now, double your money in 60 days," end quote. He offered low prices, easy terms, and promised to make public improvements once the railroad arrived. McWilliams' vision paid quick dividends as sales through the winter months grew. By 1905, the area boasted a population of almost 2,000, with thriving stores, saloons, and bakeries, most of which were in tents, helping the site earn the nickname of Ragtown. McWilliams' town site even had 3 weekly newspapers. But as the town grew, water became scarce. Because Clark owned the water rights to the ranch, the residents of Ragtown were forced to get whatever water they could from wells. Although McWilliams had beaten him to the punch, Clark was not about to let his plans be stolen by the surveyor he had hired. Clark divided the east side of the ranch into 38 identical blocks of land to form the Las Vegas town site. The blocks measured 300 by 400 feet and had 80-foot wide streets with 20-foot wide alleyways. Blocks 16 and 17 were designated for the sale and consumption of alcohol. Block 20 was zoned for a library and courthouse. Clark even went so far as naming the streets Fremont, Carson, Bridger, and of course Clark. Names that still hold today. Clark initially offered the lots for at $100 to $300 an acre. But when he was overwhelmed by more than 3,000 offers, his natural greed kicked in, He saw an opportunity to generate even more money by changing his plans. He canceled the early agreements and set up a 2-day public auction to be held on May 15 and 16, 1905. McWilliams was furious with Clark's promotion and took out an advertisement warning prospective buyers that, quote, auction sales are never good for the buyers, end quote, explaining that, quote, people get excited at auctions and feel like kicking themselves the next day, end quote. McWilliams' warning would go unheeded. On the second day of the auction, the scene from the previous day repeated itself. With dust in the air, auctioneers rambled. Bidders raised their signs, and Clark felt confident that all of his remaining plots would sell. He was almost right. While not every plot sold, Clark managed to make a grand total of $265,000 on the sale in Las Vegas. Within hours of the end of the 2-day event, people moved their tents and temporary wooden structures from McWilliams' town site to Clark's side of the railroad tracks. The local paper, the Las Vegas Age, rolled its fireproof building to Clark's Las Vegas town site, and the Imperial Hotel tore down its building only to reassemble it stick by stick on a new town site's more prestigious property. McWilliams continued his fight in a vain attempt to save the area he insisted to be called the original Las Vegas town site. He advertised in the same Los Angeles papers as did Clark, but a lack of water rights and frequent fires proved to be too much for the struggling town site. While the fires didn't completely destroy the site, it never recovered. McWilliams built his own house on the town site and eventually won the water rights for his 80 acres. But his dream of development was never realized, and he died in 1951. While McWilliams never successfully developed Las Vegas, the property he owned in Spring Mountain, later called Mount Charleston, was eventually developed into the recreational area called Lee Canyon. Clark fulfilled his dream of leaving his name behind when on July 1st, 1909, Lincoln County was split into two, Lincoln and the newly formed Clark County. The Las Vegas town site established by Clark in the area the Las Vegas town site established by Clark is the area currently known as downtown Las Vegas. And in the words of Paul Harvey, now you know the rest of the story.